25th meeting of the Town of Southampton Conservation Board. The board's meeting continued to be hybrid, which means they're both in person at Town Hall and via video conference through Zoom webinar. If you go to the town website and click on the town clerk's agendas and meetings portal, you can watch the live stream video of the meeting there. And there's a link to submit written comments for the public record. You can also join the Zoom webinar through the town clerk's portal. If you are attending via Zoom and wish to speak during the meeting, then please alert our moderator by clicking the raise hand icon or type in the chat box. Thank you. I'd invite all to rise for the salute to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What is your pleasure on the minutes of June 11th, 2025?
Move to be accepted as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearings. A 024056 Crypto Avenue LLC. And I understand someone is on Zoom to present this application. Maybe.
I have no hands up on Zoom.
It's on there, but I'm not sure if it's
Got him.
properly logged
Getting the drawings
Peter, do you
too.
see any activity on Zoom?
Yeah, they're joining right now.
Okay.
We're getting new stuff.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
I think we have new drawings.
Yes.
Yes, go right ahead.
Hi, so I'm here representing Detroit residents. I was the one that presented at the last hearing.
Could you please
So-
say your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, it's Young Yoon, 95 Empire Boulevard, Island Park, New York, 11558.
And before you continue, it looks like some new information is being presented. Would they be appropriate to pass out now to follow along with your talk?
Yes.
Marty, does your staff drawings still correspond with what they need, or you're not sure?
I'm sorry.
Do your recommendations from the drawings still correspond with anything new they're presenting, or? Okay.
There's three different tabs for the servers.
Right.
And there's three
Three different
different
documents?
setups on each staple. That are there.
Oh, got it.
There's two set of accounts there as
Wait, should I be passing these down?
well. I guess, yeah.
Why don't I pass down all three of them? It sounds like.
Usually so. Those are all the proposed surveys, existing, proposed, and then I think there's another one for there's three of them. Not sure what the third one is. He would know
We
for
can
sure.
share.
You share, we share.
You want to do these as well, or
Oh,
these are the same things that are on the wall right there?
is it the same as what's here?
No, those are just surveys. These are the actual building plans.
But it's up there?
But drawings.
We don't
Building
have
plans,
room.
you said?
Like the drawings, same things that are on there, on that wall. It's kind of hard to see, but that's why I printed
Okay.
these as well.
But these are the surveys.
He can share his screen.
Yes, he had. Well, I guess they're on the screen there, but he also has it on his screen too.
Those are gonna be cumbersome to look at right now. So
That's what I'm
let's,
saying. It's a
so
little big.
let's wait on that.
Okay.
If they become necessary, we'll take a look at them.
Okay.
Correct me
I can put them up
if, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there are two surveys there. One is showing the planned demolition, and one is showing the proposed work. Correct.
Correct. Yeah. There's three total. Young will be able to tell you the exact stipulations for
Must
all
be
three
the
of them.
new one.
All right, Young, you may continue.
Sorry, I have a little bit of trouble hearing you guys, so I'm just trying to figure out a way to raise the volume a little bit.
We can hear you. Are you having trouble hearing us?
Okay, I can hear you guys.
This is
All
the,
right.
this is future.
Oh, there
This
it
is
So,
proposed.
so since the last hearing, we've made significant changes to the design. We relocated the house further away from the wetlands, closer to the street, placing the house 89.46 feet from the delineated wetlands on the south side. And this is not this is not including the pool. The house is beyond the 75 feet buffer.
Excuse me.
In regards
could
to
you
the
make
existing
reference
swimming
to-
pool,
Could you make reference to which survey you're referring to right now? We have one.
It's
So
this
I'm-
one, this one here.
Yeah.
It's the
This is
third,
down.
for you guys, it's the
I'm
third
talking
page.
about, I don't know if you could see the screen that I'm sharing. I'm talking about the drawings that we submitted to you, the proposed plans. So if you look on the screen, I pulled the house, as I was saying, I pulled the house further away from the wetlands, providing you 89.46 feet on the north side of the property. And then the house is 80.96 feet from the wetland. This is not talking about the pool. In regards to the existing swimming pool,
It's gotta be the top.
according to an affidavit provided by Swim King Pools, who inspected the existing gunite swim pool at 24 Sunset Avenue. The pool is located well within the wetlands, is structurally sound, holds water, and can be fully restored to working condition by replacing the pool lines, installing a new pump and filter systems, draining the existing water, and reapplying marble dust finish. Right, based on our conversation, we're proposing to relocate the pool closer to the home, pulling it further away from the wetland, and then the pool is from the north side of the delineated wetland is 59.9 feet, is 50, and then in hopes to pull the pool further away from the wetland, we went from originally what we proposed was a 25 by 50 pool. We reduced it down to 20 feet by 50 foot pool. And then while we are within the 75 feet buffer, we are hoping that this is reasonable compromise of relocating the grandfather pool, since we're getting rid of the grandfather pool. I do want to point out that in the design that was previously approved by the board back in March 4th, 2015, and I'll pull that up right now real quick, for Kyle and Kresge, right? They were full, and the house on the west, which is much closer than what we're proposing. And this was what you did approve back in March 4th, 2015. In regards to restoration of the wetlands, the total area of the wetland that was disturbed within the most recent wetland boundary flagging that was completed on April 30th, 2024 is 3,696 square feet. Now, what we're proposing to do is to restore the same amount of square footage towards the back in this area, wetland that's there. And so it's coming from the current wetland, we're coming in 36 feet, and that would be restoring 3,751 square feet. And now, by increasing the main body of the wetland closer to the water, would create a stronger barrier from any future erosion and or storm surges. This would also allow the owner to install a rectangular fence around the property rather than something that's following the line of the wetland. upon discussing this with Marty, he stated that the proposed reclaimed wetlands can be considered and may represent a more practical approach to mitigating the wetland impacts. This area would take over a good portion of where the existing pool currently is. And then we have also proposed to revegetate the wetland area with beach grass, which was in the list of the approved native species that was provided to us by the board and also by the DEC. We proposed to plant over 500 American beach grass in random clusters. As this is considered grass, the growth of these plants are exponential and would take over the entire wetland area in matters of months. The grass also would have deep roots, which would provide a stronger barrier against erosion. Marty mentioned in our discussion that the restored area would need to use abutting tidal marsh elevations for biological benchmark for establishing consistent elevations. I do want to point out that a topographic survey was completed for this property April of 2024, which was prior to my client purchasing this property, closing on this property in July 2024. This was done because the survey was required for the closing, and at that time, I recommended that a topographic survey be completed as well, since this home is in a flood zone. The property, the property was also monitored, as we have mentioned that there are cameras installed all around the properties during any major floodings and rainstorms, which we've had many since the purchase of the property. As per the request of Marty, we had a surveyor go out there again and update the topographic survey based on all the work that was done since my client has purchased this property. And in the proposed survey has the updated elevations, and which indicates minimal elevation changes. The ground was, as we mentioned many times, the ground was tilled up. The existing septic systems were removed. Portions of the existing pool patio and the deck around the house was removed. The existing chain link fencing around the property were also removed, all of which disturbed the ground, the wetland area. That being said, during any storm, my client monitored the water level coming from Phillips Creek and the wetland area, and noticed that the water level barely encroached past the what was the fence line that was there before he removed the fence. Marty did provide us with a survey absent, and he said it was absent a spot elevation that was approved back in March 4th, 2015. And when we look at that, it's pretty consistent to the survey that we had, where if you look, he had the elevation 6 right about where the house is, which I'm highlighting right now in red, and that is approximately accurate to where we had the elevation 6 indicated in our proposed drawing. The previous survey that Marty provided us did not have elevation 5. Similar situations, we do have 4.8, 4.6. So it shows that the survey and the topographic survey that we had, and in comparison to the survey back in 2015, is pretty identical. Let's see here, and then to the claims that to the claims of the neighbors to the north of the property, and like I said, the pooling and the amount of rain that's been coming in specifically since the last hearing, and as you guys all know, it has rained significantly, but he didn't observe any pooling. But that being said, during the construction, My client is putting in a significant amount of dry wells to mitigate a lot of the water runoff, and he'll also ensure that the grade will be pitched away from the neighboring properties so that there's no water runoff that goes into the neighboring properties. And with that said, does the board have any questions?
I have a question I would like you to consider and not answer at this time. And the question is this: do you have a good reason why the project should not be sited in such a way as to meet the recommended setbacks as enumerated in chapter 325? So I don't want an answer right now. I want to hear from Marty, but I'd like to come back to that. Any other questions by the board?
Does Michael want to speak first?
Oh, would you like to speak too?
I'll respond on his comments, on Marty's comments.
Okay.
Good evening, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. As this board knows, this is a continuation of our hearing as related to a residential redevelopment plan for a property that contains tidal wetlands, as well as recovering wetlands that were disturbed, filled, and or rototilled without requisite wetland permits. The area that has been impacted by an authorized disturbance, as the architect has alluded to, is the area along the extension of wetlands along the southerly property line, which you see extending beyond the replacement wetlands that the applicant is offering as mitigation for the wetland impacts of this project. I am happy to see that the applicant is providing greater clarity tonight with regards to the project intentions. And it's likewise commendable that the applicant is evaluating alternative designs for the project site with the hope of finding a plan that'll be more compatible with long-term protection of the on-site wetlands and affected ecosystem. That being said, as was spoken to the chair, the project plans at present still don't comply with the wetland permit issuance standards as set forth in section 325-9. What those standards say is that for existing developed property, when that property is being redeveloped, the minimum wetland construction setbacks that need to be adhered to are 100 feet landward of all wetlands. And as was alluded to, the minimum required buffer is 75 feet. The state tidal wetland regulations are less stringent in their requirements for these types of applications. Essentially what the wetland permit issuance standards offer is that in order for this board to grant relief from the required wetland construction and buffer setbacks, the applicant needs to demonstrate that there are no practicable alternatives at the site that would meet those required setback standards. And as I had spoken to at the first hearing, I had offered two alternative sketches showing that there are practicable alternatives that would comply with the required setbacks. The first sketch takes the exact same footprint in terms of the planned redevelopment and situates it further back on the property and shows that you could establish the required 100-foot wetland construction setback and 75-foot buffer setback. Acknowledging the permit history of the abutting properties, particularly the more recent history of the abutting property to the north, and that the applicant is likely seeking to build a residence and accessory improvements that are fairly well aligned with the abutting homes. I had entered into the record at the last hearing a second alternative sketch that provides some relief from the required 100-foot wetland building setback. It offers a minimum 85-foot building setback and shows a 75-foot buffer. And the intent of that plan, again, I spoke to at first hearing, was to show a development plan that would be better aligned with the Conservation Board permitted residential development on the abutting property to the north. What it also shows is that the lots both to the south and the north are encumbered by covenants establishing wetland preservation areas and naturally vegetated buffers. Both the initial compliance sketch and the second sketch that offers some relief from the code would achieve the goal of providing for a contiguous block of protected habitat, the similar covenanted buffer that would in particular be aligned with the covenanted buffer to the north. As indicated again, the code requires that you go through this process of looking at alternative designs and seeing if the applicant can demonstrate that their plan is the least environmentally damaging plan for the site, and that there are no practicable alternatives that would either comply with required setbacks or achieve more compatible setbacks. Notwithstanding that I indicated in my email that this plan, which calls for replacement area of protected wetlands for the area that has been impacted, notwithstanding that I indicated that we could consider this. There might be some benefits in terms of land management with regards to reconfiguration of wetlands. The difficulty with entertaining this plan is the stringent wetland permit issuance standards in the code. Specifically, section 325-9B4 essentially says that we can't issue a permit that's going to result in the loss of wetlands, and the loss would be the consequence of replacing those southerly impacted wetlands with the new wetlands to the west. It says we cannot issue a permit unless the project is water dependent, or that It requires access to wetlands as a central function of the project. And lastly, and most importantly, it indicates that the town and this board cannot entertain approving a plan that results in the loss of wetlands unless the applicant is able to clearly demonstrate that there are no practicable alternatives that would allow for protection of the entirety of the existing wetlands. As Mr. Young alluded to, and consistent with the prior survey and topographical information that I shared with him on record with the town, it's not entirely clear how significant the grade modifications have been at this property. And one of the reasons is because currently, although the applicant has graciously offered spot elevations outside of the wetlands in this area here, no spot elevations were given within the either prior or post within the affected wetlands. Notwithstanding the absence of that information, it still appears, and I can share some of that information with you, the other topographical information. This is what I'm handing out now is topographical contour map that's showing the 5 and 10 foot elevation contours. Based on the information on that topo map, it still looks like there has been some change in the elevations, not only within the area of impacted wetlands, but also extending further into the property by as much as a foot, if not close to 2 feet in some areas. One of the missing pieces of information that we still need is it would be extremely helpful if we had some calculations in terms of the total amount of imported fill that was brought to this property. I understand that grading was done as part of the partial demolition, and I think the owner had indicated at the last hearing that the damaged wetlands were rototilled. But if we could get some clarity with respect to whether or not fill was brought to the site, and if so, what the quantities of that fill were, and how that fill was applied on the property, that would be beneficial to review of this application. Not only with respect to getting a better handle on any grade modifications that have already been made at the site, but a large portion of the site is in the FEMA VE zone, where and that's the reason why the new residence needs to be built on pylons. Whenever you bring significant amounts of fill or undertake significant grade modifications within a flood zone, particularly in the VE zone, that activity can cause displacement, can interfere with natural flooding and drainage patterns, and also cause displacement of floodwaters on other properties. And it's for that reason, typically my office recommends that any fill that is brought onto a property that's in a flood zone, in particular VE zone, that the use of that fill be reserved. elevation of the septic system if needed, as required by the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. What you're seeing on the plan, which I don't know that was yet spoken to tonight, is the applicant is looking to undertake significant grade changes that would extend even seaward of the planned swimming pool and open and covered verandas, as well as apparently for construction of the house. I see that extension of fill as being unnecessary and posing risk of environmental impacts. So I would ask that that any plans that are put forward before this board, that they be revisited in order to scale back significantly the extent of fill that the applicant is seeking to fill, or grade modifications that the applicant is seeking to deposit or complete at this site. I understand that if you're building, I understand that the house has to be raised to a significant elevation, and that you want typically you would want the verandas and perhaps even the pool at a similar elevation to the new finished first floor elevation of the house. But those elevations can be achieved structurally. They don't necessitate deposition of fill or modifying the grades in order to raise those improvements by fill. So notwithstanding that, I think we're making significant progress in terms of evaluation of other design options. The code is very stringent. The code charges this board and the town with protecting all wetlands, and that only, again, allows for permitting of activities in wetlands, whether that's construction, deposition of fill, grade modifications, where you're considering a water-dependent project, or where some encroachment in the wetlands is needed for access purposes, or where the property is so constrained so that there are no practicable alternatives that would allow for reclamation and restoration of the entirety of the damaged wetlands. So, and what was also alluded to is whatever the final plan looks like here, any areas of restored wetlands have to be reclaimed to the same or similar elevations to the existing undisturbed tidal marsh, particularly if we look at the replacement corridor of wetlands. So the board entertains allowing for restoration of the wetlands in this block, rather than requiring that the entirety of the more landward wetlands be extended. As this area is currently more elevated than this area, in order to achieve the proper hydrology and proper ecological functions, this area, the elevation would need to be dropped down to essentially the same elevation as this area, and then planted out, not with beach grass, which is an upland plant, but planted out with tidal marshland vegetation, such as cord grasses, high tide bush, and similar plants. So, in sum, while for the purposes of future use to the property, this plan can offer some benefits. The code is very strict about not allowing for issuance of a permit that would result in a loss of this area, unless there were no practical alternatives. If you look at the size of this property, it's a very large and deep property. So there is an ability to take the exact footprint as shown in my sketches and to push that footprint further back. The other thing that this plan, although it appears that the applicant is offering to restore significant buffer lands to natural vegetation, that's not clearly shown on these plans at present. I understand that the applicant may have concern that siting new residence further back on the property would affect the panoramic views of the water from the new residence, particularly because of the abutting residence to the south. But much of that might be negated because of the required new elevation of the residence because of its location in the VE zone. It's a little bit hard to read this right here, but I can the new residence, the finished first floor. I should mention that the property, when I speak of the need to meet the VE standards, I'm speaking of the large portion of the property being seaward of the limit of moderate wave action. When you seaward of the limit of moderate wave action, you have to meet VE standards. I think those required standards would put the minimum finished first floor elevation at 12 feet above sea level. The existing small house on the property is not raised significantly above grade. So because it's a two-floor house and because the veranda areas will also be elevated, much of that will better the views of the open water for the future occupants of this house. So, I understand, I understand some of the challenges that the applicant is facing here, but I also understand that the code is very stringent and does require that the applicant make a demonstration that there are not practicable alternatives that would allow for compliance with the minimum wetland construction and buffer standards, or that there are no alternatives that would significantly better the setbacks. As indicated by the architect, the house, I think, was indicated that it would be something like 85 or 89 feet landward of the wetlands, but the pool, I think it was stated would be as close as 59 feet landward of wetlands, which is significantly less than the requirements of the code. So that being said, in order for the applicant to come forward with a plan that meets the standards of permit issuance, I would ask that the applicant consider further design alternatives in the interest of shifting the new development further landward on that property. And if the applicant could also speak to the extent of area that would be restored to naturally vegetated buffer, that would be helpful. Because
Marty, could you clarify that for us, please? The area that was filled in?
here, this area here. This area here was filled.
And
And essentially and this area was impacted a bit too. So what essentially the applicant is indicating, and the architect can correct me if I'm wrong, is he looked at the square footage of this area and this area. And he said, let's take that, because the wetland line comes down and wraps around where the existing pool is, his thinking is, let's take that square footage and see if we can integrate it into a parallel corridor of block. Now, in those few cases where the board has entertained replacement habitat or replacement wetlands, notwithstanding that this area has been impacted already, the board typically looks for a 2-to-1 replacement. That is, that rather than provide us mitigation in equal amount of area as the area of wetlands that would be lost, this board typically asks that twice that area be reclaimed as wetlands in order to entertain allowing for the loss of wetlands. The plans are not labeled correctly. Right now, these areas are labeled as non-disturbance buffers. This is wetlands. The applicant, notwithstanding that they propose planting this with beach grass, which is not wetland vegetation, it appears that the applicant is offering to establish this as wetlands, meaning this entire area would be established as a wetland preservation area, and then there needs to be also a naturally vegetated buffer landward of that. I don't know if the applicant is offering to dedicate the large majority of this area as a naturally vegetated buffer, since the code requires a minimum buffer of 75 feet.
have plans been submitted to that effect,
For
the restoration?
No, this is actually the first time that I'm seeing a restoration concept where, again, the applicant is saying, let's forgo this area, let's allow for the loss of this area, and then they'll create this block as essentially replacement habitat. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I think the architect is going to respond back to him.
Okay. Mr. Young?
Yeah, so, again, as far as beach grass goes, we use a list that was provided to us. I mean, we have no issues with using, plants that are currently there, but I just want to reiterate the fact that the water level has not gone past where it's gone only a little bit past where the current wetland is currently. But during any flood storms or any major storms, it has not progressed further inland. That being said, as I mentioned earlier, and I understand that he pulled out that topographics of what's in that area, but the topographic survey that was approved back in 2015 basically had the same topographic information that we provided, which means which shows that there was barely any alterations to that to the topographic elevations. The reason we're requesting that the pool be closer to the house because we figured pulling the pool away from the wetland area, we figured that would be beneficial to the wetland area, right? In the event there is a major storm like another Hurricane Sandy, God forbid, we wouldn't want that all that water that's currently in that pool, because it's at grade level, to contaminate that whole area, that wetland area. By elevating the ground closer to the house, and having that pool up, it puts a lot of relief in the fact that if there's ever flooding, the water wouldn't go into the pool. On top of which, when we worked with the septic engineer, the engineer also said that the elevation has to be raised for the septic systems to work. When we redesigned this and relocated the house further back, the survey, we thought pulling it back, the house being pulled back roughly 80 feet would be more in line with what the ordinance says. Aside from the pool, we just and again, that pool that's currently there is grandfathered in, and the survey that Marty provided us for Kyle in that wetland that was approved, remaining in that area. Let me see. And then, on that, I mean, Mike, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, are you all set?
You have to go to the podium.
Oh,
Robert.
sorry.
It's okay.
It's gonna grab,
And just give your name.
sure.
And Mike, if you could just state your name for the records.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, Michael Shruvus, 180 Natures Lane, Middle Place, New York, 11764. These surveys, I mean, I'll start over because with the connection of the Zoom from last time, I'm assuming it's probably kind of similar with cutting in and out. So basically, when we had purchased the property, the survey that would be shown on that first page that you have there is the existing home that was there when we first purchased the property. On the very beginning where it says 4-foot catwalk pier, the elevation is 5 foot on the very first page. You have it, first one, yeah. So on that very first one, that's there. This grass, as shown in the pictures.
Just to review, they're not all in order. So in the bottom right, one says demolition, one says exist, and one says proposed. Are
Yeah,
you
so
looking at exist
basically-
right now?
Let me see if mine is out of order too then. All right, so then let's look at file 11508 exist.
Okay, thanks.
So that one, yeah, mine's on page 2 then too. So when we first purchased the property, at that area where it says gate, actually, that 5 foot, this grass was all grass from end to end, from fence to fence. As shown in these pictures right here, when we first were interested in buying this property back in April of 2024. So this is showing all the grass that's in this property that was currently in here. So as Marty keeps saying, that all this area has been affected and either filled in or removed, and everything that's in here. This wetland is what it looked like prior to us even purchasing the property. So this is the exact area of this area. So currently right now, what we did is we went in, we removed all the overgrown shrubs that were around the pool. There was 3 layers of chain link fence that were in here that was all removed. There was debris that was all along the side of here. You can see the chain link fences that are in here. There's 2 of them that were there. And then there was a bunch of debris that was in this area right here. And this chain link fence that was removed in here. So when we removed all this stuff that was in here, obviously the grass that was green grass got disturbed. So when we had planned on reseeding this whole area, we had hired a landscaper to come in and basically just rototill the area just so it's nice and flat. Because obviously there's tracks on machines and everything else that was in there, so you can't grow grass on lumpy, bumpy, ripped up grass. So he came in and did all the rototilling that was in here and just flattened the area out that was here. And it's the same exact elevations that were existing. It was just the existing dirt was pushed around this area as shown in the survey that was done on the topographical survey. basically shown in this survey on this existing one, it shows that the existing pool is in very, very well encompassed into the wetland area. So basically, what we're proposing is to remove the existing swimming pool, that's a chlorine pool currently, that's currently shown right here, that's in this area, and removing it and bringing it all the way up to the back of the house. As Marty also stated, that this area is an area that we have to revegetate. This area was never even touched. There was a chain link fence here. This area is a full marsh area. This is all where the water comes up. The water never, ever since we've been interested in this property in October of 2023, we have monitored this property on numerous different storms to go there to make sure that this wasn't going to be a flooded house, because the prior owner said that during Hurricane Sandy the house was damaged, but didn't know the extent of the damage because they were an owner past Hurricane Sandy. So on numerous occasions we went out to on high storm events or high surges and monitored everything that was in here. The water had only increased a little bit past this line that was right here, which is shown on this survey right here, this existing survey, which is where the existing chain link fence was, and basically only went past this bottom corner by a little bit, which would be basically like this little squiggly corner right here. The water has never went up into this area. So in numerous different DEC meetings that we have met with and agreed to and compromised with them as well, is that they even challenged and said that the flags and markings from when Marty had marked in the last two flaggings were almost inaccurate because they did not see any of this being wetland area in this left side and then on this right side. Basically on this wetland that was marked on 2013 is where they said it was more of a realistic marking that was on here, which is on those plans that you have there. So they were the ones who suggested to refill this area in. They suggested 15 feet. We had assumed by going up to 37 feet would be a better approach to revegetating this area. And by doing this, as everybody had said, it obviously is going to strengthen the area for flooding and for everything that's in here. So this area, as Marty had stated, that this area has no elevations. It's on the actual survey that was submitted on here. It was on the topographical that was submitted back in, I believe it was in 2015. So all those elevations are in there. So I'm not too sure what he's reviewing, but it is clearly shown in there. There's going to be no elevation changes to this. It would just be revegetated. So we were given a plant species list of what would be approved to revegetate to. And I guess the plant list that we picked from was not in his favor as far as what he wants to be put back in there. So we're open to ideas of what to put back in here. We were just picking from a approved list that's there. Based on your question before, why should this be granted to have the pool up here and have the less of a wetland setback, is because this pool right here is grandfathered in. So this pool could stay here. So if we had done on, let's see, this would be, if we had did on demolition, if you look at that one, that would be there, the existing pool that's there. So if we had went in there and then revegetated along with the markings that Marty had marked in April 30th of 2024, we could revegetate this whole area that's in here, and then the pool could stay there. So it wouldn't a better idea be to remove this pool in its entirety and bring it back up towards the back of the house and revegetate this whole entire area across this piece, and then it would be better for the environment to have all this area as far as revegetation. You're getting a reclamation of that area. It's a one-to-one replacement. I understand that's something brand new that I'm hearing today. It's a 2-for-1. I mean, when we had purchased the property, it was grass like this. No one had said, hey, this has to be revegetated. No one had said this is where the wetlands are. No one had said anything about that. So we're coming in to this blinded and agreeing to revegetate the area that was disturbed by previous homeowners. So back to almost 2010, there's aerial satellite footages showing that someone was accurately maintaining this whole entire area by mowing the grass and fertilizing it. You can see there's literally green stripes going back and forth in a pattern of being mowed. So when we had purchased it, there was a fence here. This area was all marsh, and then inside here, beyond this area, was just all grass. That's shown right here, where this fence is right here. That is this existing fence that was right here. So by doing that, we would assume by revegetating this whole back area would strengthen this whole entire area. This area would stay the exact way it is. As you can see beyond that area, it's all grassy marsh. And that would just basically be what we would assume to be doing that. During the last meeting, he had mentioned that he wanted us to do some compromises on the plans. So we had shortened the pool up, and the house has now been moved an additional 15 feet forward. And then we had provided a reclamation plan of this area here. This was also provided in January from the DEC approval meeting. We have an approval from DEC that 15 feet, this exact setup, but 15 feet going in. And then we had the house more forward with the DEC that they agreed on. We had the pool at 25 feet, we have it out 20. So we have been approved by the DEC to have this house closer, larger pool. So as of now, we have compromised by bringing in 37 feet as opposed to the DEC requesting 15. And we had compromised by bringing the 25-foot pool down to 20 feet and then moving this house up, I believe it's 16 feet. So that's basically where we are now. He's requesting this house to be moved all the way forward. It doesn't work that way. We have all the utilities across this whole front yard to be in here. Septic, utilities as far as the electric line, the water lines, the communication lines, septic tank that would be in here, the propane lines, everything that would be for that area. By also doing that, when we move this house forward, we now have a wall of siding, which is on this whole side right here. This wall of siding would be basically 44 feet tall by 130, 140 feet long, which would basically block this whole entire side of this house. So we would have nothing to look out of our windows besides just a big wall of siding. So this whole back of the house would just be basically purposeless by having windows on there because we're just looking at another wall of siding. So by having this house would be set back a slight bit from the neighbor's house, so we're now going further back than what the neighbor is. And by bringing this back, we would assume that would be a good compromise, being that we are removing a pool and encompassing about a $250,000 cost for that. So I don't know if you guys have any questions about that, but
I have a couple of questions. One is, are you saying that no fill has been added?
no fill has been added to this area right here. We have moved dirt that was in this area that was around the pool and moved it around, and then have rototilled the area to prep it for seed. So this area has been just basically leveled out for new grass seed after we did all the cleanup work.
And are you saying no fill has been added to the entire property?
Fill has been added to the front of the property in preparation for the septic system. So the septic engineer had requested, I believe, I don't have the exact number, but I believe it was 1,300 yards of fill to be brought in for the septic system to actually properly work. I believe it's on proposed, file 11508.
That's this one.
I don't know if it's on this survey, but I know it's on the approval from the Board of Health, which they approved.
It's not on the proposed survey, it's on the drawing that was approved by the Board of Health.
Okay, so yeah, so I would just confirm that. So that area would have, this area would be the area we added the fill to in this front area. So the neighbor's house was getting a pool done, and I walked over and asked them if they could bring the dirt over, just basically in preparation of bringing in fill for this septic system, because if we're gonna need 1,300 yards of fill, 60 yards is not gonna be really much of a dent, but it's less that we had to pay for as far as fill.
So the total fill brought into this property is 60 yards?
60 yards, yes.
And that's still in one pile, or did you move it around?
No, that's done. That's all spread. That was spread months and months ago. That was spread over the winter time, before the winter rather, because the pool was done in, I think, last summer.
Okay.
Where was the other 70? Because there's a total of 130, right?
60 total.
60 from the neighbor.
Yeah, that's all we got.
And
60.
Somebody wanted you to bring in 130?
No, the septic engineer had drew up the plans because the ground level and water is high. So in order to put a septic system in, you had to raise the system up so you wouldn't have your tanks sticking out because then it would freeze in the winter. So they had to approve 1,300 yards of fill to be brought in. Same thing that both neighbors and various homes have done on that property, have done that so the septic system works properly.
And on the bottom section, just above the green, where is the north? No, the southeast. On the southeast, move your hand up a little bit more. Okay, so there's an area just above that is wetlands there, and then in that angle, you said something about the DEC. You said that wasn't wetlands, but already flagged as wetlands.
They had, the DEC had asked us why the wetlands has been flagged these last two times in 2014 and 2021. They were asking why it's in, for starters, they were asking why it was in such a squiggly line, and they were also asking why it's protruded so far up. When they had came in and marked it and saw that there was nothing as far as wetland indication on this side, and then out of nowhere it popped up on 2024, when this is the side of the property right here, when it was flagged. So they were asking why it was flagged in this area, where it shows there's literally just green grass that's been mowed for the last 20 years.
Okay, and are you contesting the wetland line, or are you accepting that?
I mean, we don't want to drag this property on for 3 years, so we're just accepting what they said, but we're also going based on what the DEC had agreed upon, and they had given us as far as, they had said that their wetland line.
Keep in mind, the DEC has a different set of regulations, a different set of rules, a different set of definition of wetlands. So we really can't go back and forth there. We are addressing chapter 325. That's the limit of our authority, but that's what it says. So that's what we have to address.
Right, so as I just mentioned, we're not challenging the line, just basically talking what the DEC has mentioned to us. And the DEC had said by improving this area with a rectangular area, it's much stronger than revegetating on a jagged line that would be there, as far as what has been flagged from other 2 times on 2024 and 2021. So they had said that to revegetate the first 15 feet of this would be a great buffer for this area. We had went in and replaced the exact amount of footage that was in this wetland mark by doing 37 feet. So it's actually more square footage than what is, I guess, lost currently right now. But again, there's not really anything that we had did as far as removing this wetland. There was no wetland currently shown on the property when we purchased it. So shown by these pictures. These pictures are in April 2024 prior to even closing on it. We closed on this property in mid-July. These are shown on these plans here.
You said something, that doesn't make a lot of sense of what I'm saying here. What do you mean there's no wetlands on the property? What are you saying?
What I'm showing in this picture right here is that there's showed
Actually,
on
if
here.
you could show that on the survey, it's easier for me to follow along where you're talking about.
So basically on the survey.
See, on the wall is fine, but just point on the wall where you're talking about where there's no wetlands.
What I'm saying is when we purchased the property, this was all actively mowed grass, this whole area, shown in these pictures right here. So it's a little confusing, but this right here is the swimming pool. So you're standing basically in the property here, looking out this way. So this is showing where it was existing. Before we purchased it, showed that there is just pure mowed grass in here. So what I'm saying is that when we're coming into this, we're willing to revegetate a large area, as we didn't know that this was even wetlands here. We
Okay.
came in, we bought this, and we saw just green grass inside this whole entire fence from end to end. So on this survey, we're actually on the second page, which would be on the bottom, it would say exist. This right here, this back area was all grass in this whole entire area. So we're agreeing to revegetate this whole entire area, but as Marty is saying that we had removed the wetland here, we didn't remove the wetland in this area because the wetland was what it looked like was here. It was just green grass. So obviously it was already moved prior to us even owning this property. So it was either removed or mowed or whatever it may be, but this was going back for almost 20-something years of this area. So it's looked like this. And then like I had said, back in 2010, there's an aerial photo showing that someone was actively mowing this whole entire area, all the way back to the water, which is green. You can see green grass mowed marks in the pictures. So whoever stopped doing that, I don't know what the exact time of it was, but I believe it was somewhere around 2015 that area stopped being actively mowed, and then that started to take over back to its natural state. And then basically on this area is where this would be in this area here that we would be willing to revegetate in here, and we're open to other suggestions as well.
Thank you.
Well, Marty shared chief environmental laws for the town, just to add some clarity. I was never recommending that this area be revegetated. That area is a healthy intertidal marsh, a lot of cordgrasses. That area does need to be touched. As indicated, there is a fence line here. The wetland indicators, notwithstanding the periodic mowing of this area, vegetation was being mowed. And the wetland indicated plants that were dominant in that area are in fact the same plants that are listed by the DEC as characteristic of high marsh areas. Looking at the DEC website right now, it was a lot of salt meadow grasses. It was a lot of marsh elder, a lot of seaside lavender that was coming in. There was baccaris, which is ground salt. I've been to this property many times over the years. In fact, I was at the property back in 2015 when Land Use Ecological Services had flagged that extension of wetlands. And their line was very similar to the line that I flagged in 2024. Yes, there was a further advance. The ground was very wet, very mucky when I been out there. Now, understand what high marsh areas are. High marsh areas are not areas that are affected by the high tides, the daily high tides. They're areas that are affected by astronomical high tides and surges and storms. So they're somewhat very different from the composition of the vegetation that you have in here. Where you see my wetland line coming up, here, this is almost exactly consistent with the Land Use Ecological Services wetland line that was flagged in 2015. And what this area here was, and I don't know what it looks like today, but it was flooded phragmites and ground, so that extends into the wetlands in this property. In fact, you could barely walk around the pool here without getting your feet wet. The pool was historically built on a mounded fill and was surrounded by a higher mounded slate patio. So when that slate patio and the pool equipment shed up here, when that was demolished and taken down, it appears that that higher mounded area, which was not wetlands, my wetland line went around that, was part of what was used to level the grades in this area. But this area has always been a slightly lower area where the ground is often wet. But when an area is mowed, to the average observer, it may just look like lawn grasses, particularly when much of that is salt meadow grasses, which are the classic indicator of high marsh, and even listed here on the DEC website as indicators of wetlands. As indicated by the chair, and let me pass this survey out. We'll see on both the south side and north sides of the property, and that was a survey that was approved by the Conservation Board. Those extensions of wetlands were also shown. I had checked that line back then. That line was fine, but the area had expanded somewhat since 2015. So it's not really significant as to whether or not that wetland area was impacted by imported fill or grade modifications. When an area of wetlands is disturbed like that, in order to try and restore that area, we need to restore it to the pre-existing grades. That area back there was never entirely level, and that's why I can understand if a landscaper went in there and wanted to create a level lawn, why he would push soil in that area. When I speak of needs for revegetation, and the owner and the architect should understand that the native plant lists that the town uses are designed to be checklists. I'm not sure what lists the landowner and the architect were working off of, but they're an extensive list of native plants that are favorable for a variety of conditions. And so that list has to be tailored to the site conditions and the habitat that you're seeking to restore. What I still don't have, so this again, although the landowner may have been there after heavy rains or after certain tidal events, those areas that are more likely to be flooded in significant storm events, they act as a floodplain for the receiving areas for those flood tides. And when you change the grades in that area, the water has to go somewhere, so it gets displaced on other properties. The greatest thing here is to repair this ecosystem as well as we can. And that is done not only by reclaiming the extent of flat wetlands on the property, but also establishing a naturally vegetated buffer. So this is wetland preservation area. If the elevations were dropped down here, using the biological benchmarks here, this would be part of the wetland preservation area. Then you're always looking to establish a considerable naturally vegetated buffer landward event. And the plans at present are unclear as to the full extent of naturally vegetated buffer that the applicant is proposing. Again, the state tidal wetland regulations are very different. For existing developed properties, you're required typically to meet a minimum construction setback of 75 feet landward of the wetlands. And as mentioned by the chair, the state tidal wetlands definition is very different than the town definition. But the state does not require naturally vegetated buffers on existing developed properties, whereas the town code does. So while this plan may comply with state requirements, it doesn't comply with the local requirements.
Marty,
So
I just want to ask a couple of questions, because I think, I heard the applicant say that he's willing to accept the wetlands line as you later just made the point that there's a disagreement about it. But if we assume that the line as you drew it is the right line, and the problem we have is that the new proposed location for the swimming pool is only 56 and a half feet back. And the law would require us to consider whether or not every practicable alternative has been considered. The applicant said the problem with pushing it back further is the utilities in front and the septic system, et cetera. Can you just address that and why that doesn't necessarily resonate with you?
Well, number one, whenever you're redeveloping a property, typically you're not you're replacing the existing utility service lines that service the former residents. Well, the applicant would have to provide clarity, but what he may be speaking of is that, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, considerable amount of work has been done in this area. So it's unclear to me as to whether or not he's already brought in new utility lines, and now his concern will be impacted by shifting the residents further landward. But the house on the property is quite small. Yeah, I'm sure there's a water service line. I'm sure there's an electric line. There may be a gas line, but virtually every application that comes before us for a significant expansion to an existing home or redevelopment calls for replacing the existing utilities reconfiguring the routing of those utilities. So I'm not, it's not clear to me as to
The necessity
the
for-
applicant's level of concern about impacts to existing utilities.
Okay, thank you. And maybe that's something that could be addressed a little bit further about whether or not that's really, you know, a valid reason why you can't move the property for the house further back. My other question was about the existing pool and the point that the applicant made about it being grandfathered, and is the alternative that they would just leave it where it is?
The applicant can come forward with whatever application.
But
he
legally,
wants,
legally.
But the pool is not grandfathered. Because the applicant is coming in for a major redevelopment plan that calls for construction of a very large home, considerable accessory improvements as part of the mitigation of those impacts, notwithstanding that the pool may be legal and may have a certificate of compliance, we can ask that that pool be removed in the interest of better mitigating the impacts of the new development. I'm happy
But
to
there's
see.
nothing in the code that says that the pool has to be removed. The pool is, when we spoke to a zoning attorney, the zoning attorney did say the pool is grandfathered in.
Well, I'm not standing here saying that the pool has to be removed. I'm just saying that particularly when an applicant is looking for relief from the required wetland construction setbacks, we can ask that the applicant entertain removal of that pre-existing pool that is immediately proximate to wetlands in the interest of creating a better buffering habitat for the wetlands. So it's, that is one of the options that the applicant could look at as part of his mitigation plan, and as indicated, he is looking at that and is offering at this time to remove that pool.
Right. So, but what we're offering is by relocating the pool, we don't comply with the ordinance of the town. But if we leave the pool and just leave the house as it is, the house now complies with the 75-foot buffer. Right. And this is why we're requesting that, give us a little bit of a relief with this pool being located closer to the house. And then we'll pull the pool away out of the wetland. And again, the alternative option is the pool staying where it is, and the house actually could be pulled closer to the wetland because we're at 80 feet from the buffer, 80 feet from the wetland instead of the 75 feet.
I need to understand what your application is for. What are we looking at? Are we looking for the pool to stay where it is or to move it?
We're proposing to relocate the pool
Let's
closer
establish
to
what
the
your
house.
application is for that we can address and not go flip-flopping back and forth. That's way too
Right.
confusing.
So we're requesting that the pool be closer to the house, right behind the house, and we're asking that the board recognize that we're pulling the pool out of the wetland and creating less impact by pulling the pool closer to the house. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the approval that was approved back in March 15th, 2015, had the house at 55.4 feet, and our pool is roughly in that same, roughly in that same area, right? We're proposing to put that pool 59 feet, so even further away than what was previously approved in the past.
Thank you so much. Everyone. Hey, how are you? What can you get this down right here?
One of the problems of comparing this application to 2015 is that the wetland line that we're looking at right now is different than the wetland line that was looked at in 2015.
Yes, it's different, but, so actually, if we were to take our dimensions from the wetlands that was done in 2015, we'd be even further away than the 55 feet. We'd actually be even further because the wetland has moved closer landwards. But we're doing it based on the most current delineation that Marty has flagged, last year. We're doing it off of that line, and we're pulling the pool, we're pulling the pool 59.9 feet. Let's just say 60 feet from that wetland, right? So what we're saying is our entire structure is further back than what was approved back in March of 2015, and their proposal had their pool still in the wetland, and we're proposing to remove that pool out of the wetland, which would be better for the wetland area.
I don't have recollection of all the circumstances in that application, 2015. If you want to do a comparison of that, we'll have to go back and dig up those records. Usually, there are a whole bunch of other factors involved in those historic approvals. And usually, we're only giving one side of the story from the applicant. And usually, there's a whole bunch else that needs to be considered. So in my mind, unless you want to go back and dig up all those records and understand completely why that application was approved, I don't really want to consider that.
We can only start with where the wetlands are now and what the distance from the wetlands are now. We're not going to time machine back to 2015. And the question was posed, why is it not possible to just move the project to the 100-foot setback that would make it conforming with the code to begin with? It could be moved closer to the road, and 59 feet is not 100 feet. So it's, regardless. So, there are still a bunch of questions, but we have to work with what's going on now, not what may have been approved in 2015, because we're not looking at that project. We're looking at this project.
Part of what I'm thinking about in this application is that if you follow the wetland line on both borders, the north and the south, where they come up the property line, they coincide with wetlands on adjoining property lines. It's important to recognize that, and I believe it also may be very important to preserve them because they're part of the same wetland. And when we look at the green area as an alternative, that mathematically and logically, or more, let's not do logically, let's do mathematically, looks like a very much easier methodology of plotting a way to use this property. It makes it somewhat simple. However, that's not our charge in chapter 325, and we might be missing the boat. Because there are wetlands on the adjoining property that move up the property line that probably ought to stay there. I don't know that I can agree that that green area is sufficient mitigation for removing the wetlands on the two edges of the property line that go up. I'd be much more comfortable following Marty's line that's been flagged, restoring them as wetlands and using our measurements off of those lines, because then that coincides with the adjoining property, and when the adjoining property comes in, applicant comes in, we can work on the adjoining property according to the circumstances of that. But if we put a wetland line way down where the green is, And then the adjoining property owner comes in for an application, he's gonna say, hey, why can't I do that too? And in so doing, we may have just given up a lot of square footage of wetlands that is inconsistent with the purposes of chapter 325.
I'd like to post some clarity on that. The neighboring property has no wetlands on his side. He actually has a bulkhead. So this side of the property is all grass. It's all flat grass. There's a couple bushes and trees that are in between the property, and that's about it. There's no wetlands on his side of the property at all. And as Marty had said, he went and visited the property so many times, he could basically give you that same answer, because this is just grass on this side. So there's nothing that would, this line that would be here would not be impacted by this side, because it's literally, you could see through this area. There's nothing there. There's an ornamental tree and some other odds and ends of just low landscaping stuff that's in there. It's very, very minimal. It's so minimal that you could walk through on numerous different areas. So there's nothing on this adjoining property. There's a little bit of, as you can see in that picture right there, there's a little bit of grass on this bottom corner that shows right there along the actual property line. If you could pull up an aerial shot, you could see actually on that right there where his bulkhead is, it's all grass. We're also not opposed to revegetating in this line. It's not being opposed to doing that. It's just that this is a way stronger approach than having a small squiggly line across the edge of the property. We'll do either way. We're just not really concerned with one or the other, but this would be a way stronger approach. Also by InterScience had come up with this as well, as a zoning analysis.
Marsh, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. There are wetlands on both the properties, and that's the reason they're both encumbered by covenants establishing wetland protection areas and naturally vegetated buffers. In the case of the northerly abutting lot, the wetlands join with my line that comes up alongside the pool. And if you look at the photograph, you see a very dark area here. That's the area of wetlands there. And then on that property, we established a 75-foot buffer that's covenanted. And it may have been 75 or 100 feet. And you'll see that on my sketch. My alternative sketches, I tried to portray where the covenanted wetlands and buffers are on the adjacent property. The southerly abutting property is radically different for many reasons. First of all, that property had a history of much more extensive prior disturbance when that came before the board, where the pre-existing natural vegetation, much of the pre-existing natural vegetation had been removed, and the area had been replaced by lawn. So the line that actually got flagged on that property kind of just ran down here and then came across here, because this area had been historically impacted not only by landscape practices but likely grade modifications. That being said, when that property came before this board, the board saw fit to not only protect the remaining wetlands, but also protect the buffering area. That property is not in compliance with those covenants. And that's why when you look at that southerly abutting property, you're seeing an extensive lawn going all the way down to a bulkheaded boat basin. So that's why on those sketches, what I showed were the approximate required areas of covenanted wetlands and buffer. But yes, indeed, this property has a very extensive landscape and lawn going down most of the property down to those bulkheads. Property is in non-compliance. At some point, that landowner will be required, at the very least, to restore those covenanted areas as well. So although the linkage is historically defined, is less on the southerly abutting property because the wetlands come down more like this. On the
northerly abutting property, they link right in to the Phragmites and groundsel bush dominated flooded wetlands that I marked here. And that's part of the reason why I provided two sketches. I provided a fully compliant sketch, but also a second sketch where the construction would be at an 85-foot setback, because that would provide for a better alignment with that home. As the landowner indicated, yes, indeed, that home on the southerly lot does jut further seaward, and it's very close to the property line, and would affect the views from the new residents in that direction. The elevation of this residence may help soften those impacts a little bit, but yeah, the views will be impacted on that side of the property by that abutting southerly home. The abutting northerly home is situated far back and would, in all likelihood, be aligned very well with what is at least being recommended as far as a development plan for this property. So that house is unlikely to adversely affect that panoramic view. That being said, the landowner, of course, has a straight shot view of Phillips Creek across a very expansive marsh, beautiful scenic view. So yes, if the house is situated further back, he's not going to have perhaps that full panoramic view, but he certainly has an appreciable view of Phillips Creek directly towards the water, because this is all low marshy vegetation, so there's an open view there. So anytime that one of our goals when we establish buffers, as was alluded to by the chair, is we try and make sure these protection areas not only tie in with existing protected areas on other properties, but on future protected areas. If that is, when and if that southerly abutting lot comes in with a redevelopment plan, and it's hard to predict when that will happen, we will in all likelihood not only require very extensive restoration on our property, but also try and shift that residence further land. But of course, that's not here and now. That's the future.
Something I really want to know, and I don't see it delineated on this survey, is where the 200-foot line is from the wetlands to show us where our jurisdiction is.
If you work off my sketch that shows the 100-foot setback, and you
All right, so I can
kind of get a handle on where that 200 would be. A large portion of this property roadside is outside of the 200 feet. I think the new septic system, I think the entirety would be outside of 200 feet, correct?
That would be
Oh. Okay, so there's a line that says line of moderate wave action, just for the board. That is beyond the 200-foot line.
So what that indicates is any home construction seaward of that line has to be raised up on pylons.
Okay, but for our jurisdiction, all that area where the septic system is, we don't address that. Where you want to put fill for that septic system in the immediate area, that's outside of our jurisdiction. Other people handle that, but not us.
Yeah, that's true. Notwithstanding any community or neighborhood concerns regarding any grade modifications in that area, roadside, if that area is outside of the 200 feet.
And it looks like
We have no authority to
looks
regulate.
like your drawing is the same scale as this approximately. So if you take that line of moderate wave action and look seaward, I'm guessing 3/4 of an inch, 7/8 of an inch. that's where the 200-foot line is, and that's the limit of our jurisdiction. So we can limit our concerns with the area from that line seaward.
Yes.
I'll be back in a minute, and I got a couple more questions. You can ask questions now.
The line of seaward,
Line of moderate
okay, that
wave
one,
action.
thank you.
So that's approximately the 200-foot line.
Great, thank you.
It makes it simpler for us,
Mm-hmm.
and they gotta deal with the rest.
Can't hear you.
This pushes their plan back 40 feet, basically. Affection,
That's where Marty would like them to be. That's not where they are now.
Right, no, I mean, that's what they're at, 56, 56.5 or
89,
59,
well, 59 and,
56.5.
yeah.
It's a 606-foot long property? Am I reading that right? 608 feet,
608.
608,
608.
586 on the other side.
Oh, 586. Nice number.
I sure am glad there's air conditioning in here. But in 2 days, it's gonna be so cold, we're gonna wish we put the heat on.
I'm ready.
I think we need to wrap this up. Let's talk about the things we know and that we agree on. The applicant is not contesting the wetland line. We've got a wetland line. That's a good starting place. The applicant is suggesting that green area be restored into wetlands. He's also saying he's willing to restore the Marty's flagged line as wetlands. So there's no argument there. We can choose which one we like. We can go either way. He said he agreed with that. I assume that it still goes.
Yeah.
The big issue, and as far as the septic and the fill up there, that's outside of our jurisdiction. He can deal with that.
Did you, I don't mean to interrupt you, but did you see this copy from Swim King Pools? I had submitted it to the board prior, but this is showing if we actually did keep the pool in the existing location, the pool is in good operable condition.
Okay.
There was a couple options that we proposed.
Okay,
We proposed like
I
three
really-
different versions to try to compromise this. and get
Okay,
it
I
back.
really don't want to
Yeah,
go
we
there
had that.
because you want the pool back where the house
No,
is,
we do.
and it's
we want
better,
it out.
and it's better for it to be back there.
Correct.
I think the board wants it back there too. You want it back there. So all you're doing is looking at leverage to get more things you want by saying you could leave it there. You don't want to leave it there. We don't want you to leave it there. We're
No,
gonna
what
find a
I'm saying
way,
is if
we're
this
gonna find a
doesn't
way to
progress-
move it.
If this doesn't progress forward and
Well, we're
the
gonna-
time takes longer,
Well,
because
our job together now is to make it progress forward. So
Correct.
let's do that right now.
just a backstory, we're paying, because this property was unlivable when we purchased it.
Yeah.
So there's no mortgage you can get.
Okay,
So
but
we're paying $12,400 a month, interest only, so it's literally just throwing money in the garbage. So we're trying to move this project forward as soon as we can. So what I'm
Right.
saying is if this doesn't have any insight or light about moving it behind it, we just leave the pool and renovate and just move on about it.
well, let's
don't-
see if we can get to a place where we can both live.
Right.
We're bound by chapter 325. There is some flexibility there, not a whole lot. We can't just, on the whim, say, we do this, that, the other thing. We have to have good reasons for that. And there's been a lot of testimony here on both sides of, to help us make those decisions. So what I see as the biggest issue that we don't have clarity on, or don't have agreement on, or at least have not articulated agreement on, is exactly what the setback should be of what I'll call the project. You know the size of your house where you want it to be, you know the size of the pool, and I haven't heard any testimony that argues about that. So let's not talk about the size. It is what it is, that's what you want. You want your pool, you got an application for that. So let's look at that block of, what I'll call the project, and where it should be. You have it in a place located at the closest point, 56.5 feet from the northern wetland boundary. Marty has a place where he has suggested it can be 100 feet, another place it suggested it can be 85 feet, as two alternative drawings. One of the tensions that we're experiencing is this. The law says if it can be moved back, it should be. You talk about the utility lines, they're not really an issue. You talk about the view, that is an issue for you. And quite frankly, if I was living there, it'd be an issue for me too. That's not something we can directly address in chapter 325, but we can be aware of that. And we can be sensitive to that. But we can't let that drive the decision.
No, we totally understand exactly what you're saying. We would figure that the driving decision would be removing this pool in its entirety from this encompassing wetlands. With it gonna, in respect to costing us about $250,000 to remove that pool, that's in a good working condition. You know, it's like saying, hey, your car doesn't look nice, but let's just demolish it because it doesn't look nice instead of just, fixing it up. So we're trying to do as much as we can for the board in recognition of that.
If you want to leave the pool there, we would probably require you to meet the 100-foot setback and create a buffer zone that would be the whole area south of that, 75 feet plus, and leaving just maybe a 5-foot area around the pool.
And I would be in favor of that.
But because of that, I actually would be a little more lenient and say, get that pool out of there because it shouldn't be there. And move it back to Marty's other sketch of 85-foot setback. See, that would give you, I think we can argue with being consistent with the law because moving the pool becomes mitigation. Now, how much mitigation, that's somewhat of a judgment, but certainly it would be some mitigation because we don't want that there. And I would think it would be better to do that than to leave it there because who wants a pool way down there when your house is way up here? But go ahead.
The other side of the sword from restoring the wetlands in whatever line they get restored is the fact that there is a buffer that's going to go past that. As long as he understands that it's not just restoring the wetlands and the rest he can have as lawn, there is a buffer that's going to go to a few feet from where the pool is going to be the beginning of the project. And on Marty's sketch, whether it's the 85-foot or the 100-foot setback project, the restored wetlands are only part of the picture. The rest is the buffer, which is still not going to be maintained. There's not going to be activity at all.
You understand that, right?
On Marty's sketch.
Can you
nothing from here down.
You guys have a pen? We could mark this up just so we can
But-
kind of be all on the same page.
But this may be where you're restoring wetlands. You can't touch anything from here back going forward if this is going to be the buffer. This is going to be a non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer, so your activity from your pool is going to stop there. And even though you're only actively restoring this much, you can't touch any of this either.
So
You
what would
can't
do
have a
with
croquet, let it grow back. You can't have a croquet set there. You can't
Sometimes we let it grow
Nothing.
back naturally, that's passive
active or
restoration.
passive, but it's a
Sometimes
non-disturbance
actually-
area.
Actually planting things. Marty is
This is
more-
all what you're restoring, but you're still not touching the rest of it. I want to make sure he's clear that that's not activity area for his lifestyle after this project goes from here on or from there on. It's a two-part formula for.
So at that point, you'd be revegetating the whole backyard then at that point.
You don't have to revegetate the whole thing. You can let it grow back passively, but the bottom line is, from
Well-
that line from the pool on, you can't do anything anymore. That's not active lawn for you.
Marty, you want to speak to active or passive?
Buffer is not active lawn. Buffer is not
Let
active
Marty,
lawn.
Marty is more
It's not.
versatile.
Play sets or
Environmental
picnic
elements
tables or
built out.
croquet.
You know, I would have to reassess the extent of disturbance, but where I see opportunity, good opportunity for an area to recover naturally to a healthy state of natural vegetation, I favor that over asking a landowner to spend considerable amount of money on importing nursery stock. Wherever there's an opportunity to let nature take care of itself and let natural vegetation come in on its own. It's always better than spending a lot of money on plants. You have less impacts from deer browse and other things. So, you know, that's somewhat flexible in terms of how any buffer that's established would be restored. Obviously, there are areas, you know, the area with the pool where patio's been taken out, the soil's been moved around. You know, there may be some grade modifications that are needed. So there may be some planting. But my interest is always in working with landowners to, number one, try and work with the natural vegetative succession recovery process as much as possible, and try and minimize the expenditures in terms of planting.
Thank you.
And it's
Marty.
to make sure that they know what a buffer means.
Take a look at this, please,
That's all.
so you know what would,
Yeah,
They're
Tom,
thinking the wetlands restoration is all that they have to do, and the rest they
there's
get.
another one on the other
Everyone
side.
understands now that any.
One is 100
buffer-
feet, the other is 85. And it shows the difference where, from the pool to the buffer, how much you have. If you go back 100 feet, you have 25 feet where you could put lawn or whatever you want to do.
So beyond the pool would be 25 foot of grass, you're saying? Or
If you have a 100-foot setback,
100 foot?
you have the 85-foot setback, you see what it is, that's on the other side.
So it's
I
about
think
5
the
to 7.
85 shows a 75 foot buffer. But, so then it's less lawn.
Yes,
But yeah, the buffer area, while you always have a 4-foot walking path to get to a dock, it's an area that becomes naturalized meadow, natural vegetation, as opposed to lawn or ornamental landscaping.
Right, so yeah, moving it forward more gets more of a buffer, or green grass rather.
moving
not
it
green
back
grass.
more.
Right, move it back.
And you'd have
Buffers aren't
25
gonna be-
feet of lawn, whatever you wanted to do with
Right,
it.
right.
See, and the purpose of the buffer, and I think that's what you were trying to get to, Tom, is you have wetlands. Now, if you just are allowed to have lawn or activity, any of the chemicals or anything from that lawn can just run off right into the wetlands and destroy them. So the buffer is there to be a buffer and protect the wetlands, and that's why you can't do anything in there. And Marty is giving you how you can recreate that. One way is to bring in plants, or you can just have it, come back naturally. Coming back naturally is much more effective in the preservation of the ecosystem. So the buffer is protecting the wetlands, and that's why Tom was trying to say, you have to realize you can't do anything in there.
I don't want them back here in 6 months and find out they've been mowing it. and
Yeah,
they've
or
been
even
actively
just
using
doing
it.
anything.
It's non-disturbance from that line out, whether it's active or passive revegetation.
Right, so removing the pool would be removing the chlorine pool from the wetlands totally. Which would.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the pool, I'm talking about the line from
No, I
where
get
your
that, but
project
as she
goes
was-
out
As
is
she was mentioning
not
about
touched.
fertilization.
Yeah.
Which, if fertilization is a big concern, I would think chlorine would be a much larger concern with that pool overflowing into the area.
Let me just,
Yeah, but that's, I think we're
That's-
not,
that's
I don't think
different,
we're
separate.
talking about the same thing.
yeah,
I
more,
understand
let me,
A buffer is, the buffer from the project
I'm
down.
not on the buffer.
Okay,
I'm
I'm
referring
just
to
making
the
sure everyone
damage
knows
of
what a
the
buffer
wetland.
is. I just don't want you coming back in and saying, what do you mean I can't mow that? You know,
No,
and what do you mean I
we're
can't have
past
picnic
that part.
tables?
She
Okay,
was
that's
mentioning
fine.
about fertilization seeping into the ground and damaging wetland and ecology. What I'm saying is if that pool stays there, that ruins the whole area as well with anything overflowing.
But we were still saying that even if the pool was renovated in place and the project was done in a different way, you would still have to have a buffer. It would be almost no lawn area except for where the pool is. You'd have a path to the pool and around the pool for maintenance. The entire rest of the lawn, it'd still be buffer, but the project would be smaller and within the 200-foot setback for us to be regulating. You wouldn't have as big a project anyway. So you can have a pool where it is, but you're not going to get a house as big as you're getting before, otherwise,
could
because
also
you've
renovate
got
in
a
times.
structure, and you've got a structure in, you know, in our jurisdiction.
Right,
You're
we
not
could
going to
also
have any
renovate the
activity
current
around the
home.
pool except the 4-foot path to the pool and around the pool. Everything else is going to be buffer.
Right, but we could also renovate the home and do something smaller.
You could,
You're right.
but just understand what a buffer is. If the
I'm-
pool is
we're
in
beyond-
place,
I got that
if the
part.
pool is in place or somewhere else, everything else around it is going to be buffer.
So there's currently a patio still there. Half the patio's removed, half the patio's still there.
Okay, whatever is agreed upon as far as leaving the pool in place, everything else is gonna be buffer. You're not gonna have
I'm not
anything.
concerned about the buffer.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm concerned with removing the pool and moving it out, and getting it out of the wetlands. But if it comes to the
And
point.
you can still move it, but from that point out, it's not gonna be usable by you as lawn either, just so you know.
Right.
Just wanna make sure
But
everyone
I
is
wanna make
comfortable.
sure as well that if the neighbor to our south side has 0 wetlands on his property and it's mowed grass, why is he not in violation or having something to?
He doesn't have a permit in front of us right now. If
Right,
he
so-
does have a permit in front of us right now, or has a violation from a permit that he already had on his property, he'd be in front of us right
So
now.
after that after he did all that, he could have his lawn that way? Is what you're saying?
If he is not doing an active project where he needs a permit from us, we're not talking about you. You're in front of us, he's
I
not.
understand that, but you're saying that you have to have that area as a buffer, it has to stay that area as a buffer, and it can't be removed or anything else like that, but the neighboring side has 0 grass on his side.
Let Marty speak to that.
Otherwise,
You know, just quickly, he can and will be cited in response to your concerns
Is he gonna have
regarding
a
the
30+
state
years?
of noncompliance, just to assure you that we're not signing off on his noncompliance. I just wanted to quickly just mention on the buffer is not only important. Yes, you're absolutely correct, Mike, that removal of the pool negates any risk of toxic chlorine impacting the wetlands and aquatic life. But the buffer is also important as habitat for wetland-dependent wildlife. So many wildlife species that rely on wetlands need adjacent upland natural habitat as well. So the buffer is important for many reasons. Thank you.
So as far as this goes, he had drawn up an 85-foot buffer and we're proposing 56.5 feet.
No, 85-foot setback, 75-foot buffer.
Okay, so an 85-foot setback,
Yes.
correct, so that would be 85 feet from that furthest flag. That's on this proposed survey.
85 feet from the closest wetland to your project.
Yes,
The
where yours
setbacks are
is,
from the closest wetlands to your project up.
So can you show me on here where 85 foot would be?
85 foot is from there to there and there to there.
I'm looking for on the survey.
it's approximately, if you look at your proposed.
Right, this is what I'm looking for. On this survey here, can you show me where the 85-foot mark is?
Yes. Do you see the 59.9 feet
You're on,
on the proposed?
Well, it says, yeah, proposed.
11.08.
all right, so yeah, 89.5 feet.
Look just up from that, you see 89.5 feet for the house, for the covered veranda setback.
The 89.5 right here?
89, yes, 89.5, just above the 59.9.
Below, you mean?
Well, depending on which way you got the paper.
You have proposed?
Yes. Yeah, this is 59.9, and then above it says 89.
Yeah, the 89 right here, 89.5 and
so-
59.9.
So that's 89.5. We're talking, Marty's sketch is 85, so drop 4.5 feet back from there, and that's your 85-foot mark.
Okay,
So you're looking at roughly the pool plus another few feet back.
right,
So
so,
that's 20 feet, I don't know, 25 feet, I'm guessing. This is, yeah, 25 feet from the pool. 20, if you move the whole project back 25 feet, I'm gonna see if the board would approve that.
so you're
I haven't
saying,
really talked to them about that, and they may have strong feelings, but what I'm saying is, I would agree to that, and if enough other board members agree to that, we could close this hearing tonight.
so on the drawings right here, we're proposing at the 59, so you're looking for an additional would be, was that 26 feet roughly?
20, 59, yeah, 20, 25 and a half feet, 59. Yeah, 25 and a half feet.
Right. By having this pool in the back, you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. Take your whole project, move it back 20,
6 feet.
yeah.
26 feet.
But that's based on his paper, that would be in agreement with him.
That's using I'm using Marty's sketch as the template.
Superimpose this over it, it's all to scale.
Yeah, it is.
The 85-foot, well, the line where the end of the buffer is right where the 20-foot line is, in the middle of, right past the pool, in the middle of where it says veranda on his proposed. That's the line that would become the end of the buffer, 5 foot more would be the beginning of the project. Project would basically start where the house start, basically.
Where the veranda is.
Where the veranda ends would be the beginning of the project. So
Yes.
however much this is, the
It's 25
20
and a half
foot
feet.
plus the 5, so moving it 25 feet, like you said, would get it to the point where it matches up with Marty's sketch with the 85-foot distance from the closest wetlands to the pool, patio.
And all the dimensions of
edge.
your project
All
would stay
dimensions of
intact.
the project stay the same. It's just you're moving the whole thing 25 feet towards the road. And that would line up with
And your
Marty's sketch
elevation-
with the 75-foot buffer, 85-foot line between.
You'd have to comply with the elevation requirements. You could actually, I don't know if you can or not, you probably could raise that a little bit if you wanted to, which could give you a better perspective for your view, but that's your business. That's not chapter 325 business.
Right. So what we were ideally looking for is a little bit more of a compromise between being a little bit closer to this proposed one. You know, trying to get as close as we can, because we were already compromising by removing, obviously we're past that part, but we were compromising by revegetating, we're compromising by shrinking the pool, we're compromising by already removing, or moving the house forward already by 15 or 16 feet, I think it was on here proposed. So I mean, we're trying to compromise as best as we can, but we want to try to get it.
No, but remember that
But we've already compromised from 100 to 85.
our starting place is 100. and
Right, but
that's-
I'm also incurring a cost of $250,000 to remove the pool, but I could leave it there.
I'm all for that, and we'll make the setback 100 feet.
Right, and we're way more than 100 feet beyond that, but by keeping the pool there.
Well, no, then
No, you're
you're still at your house starts at the 81-foot mark, I think. So you still have to push it back 19 feet.
No, your project goes for a 59.9 foot setback. That'd have to move to 100.
Would you take out your veranda, your open veranda? I think the house itself starts at, the covered veranda starts at the 81-foot mark.
You know, I just thought if the pool is gonna be retained, we need to adjourn this, and the applicant needs to come back with an alternative plan.
Okay.
That can't be
That sounds-
decided upon a radical change like that.
Right.
And at this hearing.
Right.
We need to see the actual plan.
Okay, so let's adjourn it.
Well, let's give them a chance to. I don't want to rush you. It's a
No,
big
I understand
decision.
that, but I'm just looking for some kind of compromise on this
Well,
part.
we
you know?
spent an hour and a half with the project on there. And then you're saying now that you understand about a buffer and this, the other thing, you're thinking, well, I'll just leave the pool where it is. And then we gotta go back to another plan. We can't look at this plan anymore.
It's not what we're looking for. You must have obviously misunderstood that, but what I'm trying
Okay.
to say is that I'm not using it as leverage. I'm just saying you guys have compromised 15 feet, but we're coming and compromising almost 10 times that by removing.
We also have the legal requirement, as Marty was explaining before, that we have to
Superimpose
be within these specified setbacks in the law. So it's
See,
a
from
little
your
bit different.
point of view, it's a compromise, but if you're following the law, that's not a compromise.
It's not a compromise. You
Our
So what do
code,
we do from here?
our code calls for us to ask for alternative.
He's asking what he did. Where we are right now, we can close the hearing today if you agree to moving the project back 25 feet. If that's not
26.
what you want to do, and you want to keep the other pool, we have to adjourn this and have you come back with a different plan to show us exactly what you're going to do. That's exactly where we're at.
Should we take 5 minutes for them to talk?
What I'm looking for right now is, what is your best compromising for this part right here?
We
Like
just gave it to
from
you,
A to B.
85 feet, which would move your project back 26 feet.
Yeah.
But it's 26 plus what we originally had proposed. So it's really, we were at 35 before. So by going from 35 to 85, we're actually moving 50 feet and shrinking the pool 5 feet.
What we're looking for is an 85-foot setback to the pool. Between
On
80,
the edge of the
from the
wetlands.
pool to the wetland, okay?
I didn't follow those numbers.
I didn't either.
Let me,
My original plan that we had submitted from what Young the Arctic has drawn up was at 35 feet from this line right here down. We had compromised last time and went down to 50. We went up to 59 feet, and then
okay,
shrunk the pool from 25 feet wide to 20 feet wide.
okay. I'm gonna tell you what you don't wanna hear, but I gotta tell you anyway, because it's what we do all the time. And that is, when an applicant comes in with a project, we test it against the code and the setbacks of the code. That's our starting place. If you come up with a project that puts your house right on the wetland line and you move it back 50 feet, we don't consider that a compromise. That's not something we would even entertain. So we don't look at it that way. We look at the 100-foot setback. That's the standard. And you have to, the code calls for you to give testimony as to why that 100-foot standard should not be met or cannot be met. And if you can't do that, we don't have the authority to say anything less than that.
Right, but we have utility lines in this area that if we continue to move up, we're gonna be removing utility lines, which has already been approved by PIC&G and approved by Suffolk Water. And then we're gonna have to remove the septic system and move it forward again, we're gonna have to reapply for another septic permit.
You mean you've already installed all of that?
That's all installed. It's based on permits from Suffolk Water, or septic system from Suffolk Health, Suffolk Water, and electric lines.
Yeah, but you still needed our
I
permit
think you have to
first.
adjourn this.
If we don't,
Where were the first agency to give you any approvals for
That's the
anything?
cart before the horse. This is the starting
This
place.
is the
Not the
starting
ending
place
place.
for
you know, the
permits.
things that we have right now are just the water and electric.
I mean, if I may, keep in mind that we originally were keeping the original foundation for the house. And by moving the house back, you need to understand that, or the client is no longer able to salvage the foundation that we were originally planning to save.
We understand that, but it's a matter of keeping the old pool and renovating the house in place, or moving the house altogether, which means moving the pool and moving it to a location that's conforming or able to be given a relief on the code. We've given two alternatives, but if you're gonna go back to using the original foundation and keeping and renovating there and keeping the pool where it is, then you've got to come back with a plan that shows how you're going to renovate the house in place, which means it's a different project than the last 2 hours we've just spent talking about the pool not being there anymore. Just wasted 2 hours.
Just clarify, is your new IA septic system installed?
No.
Good,
So that needs to be done anyway.
good. You got a permit for it, but it's not installed.
Correct.
Okay. Good. Because those are expensive things to install.
Yeah, like 40,000.
Yeah.
Let me talk to the architect and see what his thoughts are. Because there's a lot of, if we move forward again on moving up, it's a lot of
Do you
changes.
want to adjourn it and do that, or do you want to just take a 5-minute break and
I'm
talk?
gonna take a 5-minute break, because I don't wanna go adjourn. I mean, unless the meeting's like in 2 weeks, but I'm not sure what the next meeting date is.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but we've got more agenda to go through. Why don't you go in the other room and talk to him? We'll
July
work on
9th.
some of our other agenda, and when you're ready to come back, we'll come back and talk about it.
So you said July 9th was the next
July
meeting?
9th or July 23rd are the two meetings in July, second and fourth Wednesdays.
So now, just based on, I'm not familiar with this process, it's the first time applying to Southampton, I'm familiar with Brookhaven and Islip and other areas. Applying here, how does the next step even work? Like, say we have made an agreement, what is the next step of that? Does it go to building after that, or how does that all work?
Yeah,
Well, you have
The
to get our
procedure
permit
is-
first, and you have our permit to building, and they can issue a building.
Right, but if I'm agreeing to what you're saying, as
if you're
it is as
agreeing,
the
then,
agreeance.
then probably at the next meeting, we'll have a resolution on the agenda to approve your project. And then you'll probably have to get some planting plan for the restoration. And when that's submitted, we can issue the permit to you.
Covenants.
And covenants, yes. It may take a little while to do that. It shouldn't take very long, though. And then you go to building department to get a building permit for your house. You have to get all the other, Suffolk County Health Department approvals for the septic system. Well, you may already have it.
We have that.
So it's close the hearing, approve the permit, releasing the permit to you, you supplying planting plan and covenants that are acceptable by the town attorney's office, and then bringing that to the building department for your permit to start construction.
So,
Essentially, the yellow brick road to,
And I'm assuming your project meets all the zoning setbacks and
yeah, hopefully there's no zoning
permit and
problems.
all that stuff.
right, yeah, according to the 20-foot setback in the code book, that's basically what we followed by in a 45-degree angle. So we filed, well, not me, but the architects followed by.
The building department handles all those things. We don't get
But I'm just saying, you were asking about setbacks.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, is that something that would potentially, the architect draws his revegetation landscape plan that he's approving of, something that gets back and forth on email and it gets approved on July 9th? Is that what you're insinuating, or?
Maury, why don't you speak to that?
Just to get some clarity here, as was indicated, if the hearing was closed tonight, the next step would be for Karina and I to draft a resolution of conditional approval that goes before this board for a vote. Then you have to meet all the terms and conditions of that resolution. It's going to ask for a revised survey. It's going to ask for, once the revised survey is approved, draft covenant describing the wetland protection area and the naturally vegetated buffer. When that covenant has been approved by the town attorney's office, that has to be recorded with the Suffolk County clerk. You have to return the certified document, library and page. We have to come to some resolution in terms of whether or not you're going to come in with an active planting plan for the buffer, or you're going to allow it to succeed naturally. And then when those issues are addressed, we issue the actual wetland and proceed with building. And then you'd be in a position to go back to the health department to request any needed amendments to your existing permit for the sanitary.
So hypothetically speaking, as I asked before, does that able to be done by July 9th? Or is that?
No, the only thing, if the hearing is closed tonight, the only thing that's gonna happen on July 9th is there's gonna be a resolution before them of conditional approval, and then you're gonna get a copy of that resolution. You have to meet the conditions of that resolution before you get the actual permit.
So timeline, what are we speaking of?
Depends on how long it takes you to get. the permit
Typically,
and
at the very least, it takes about,
Two people.
and that's a matter of how much pressure you can put on the surveyor, but typically it would take about a month after July 9th for you to get all those documents in order for us to issue the actual permit. And that's an expeditious chronology, but yeah, it's, it could potentially happen in a month after July 9th.
What were you saying? I couldn't hear
No,
you. Sorry.
I'm paralleling what he's saying.
The biggest
a month
holdup
or
is
two.
not my office on that, it's you getting the surveyor to come back with the.
Let's
Full
say
survey,
that's
I can do that in 2 months.
Okay.
I'm not concerned about that.
All right, so then,
I want his number.
realistically,
There's a lot of projects for us, and he's been a great guy, honestly.
realistically, it then could be possible for you to have a town wetland permit in hand about 1 month after July 9th. Okay?
All right, I'm gonna talk to the architect quick.
Okay.
Oh, just quickly, in the event that we look to close the hearing tonight, another issue that needs to be brought to resolution is the extent of grade modifications that you're going to allow for the purposes of building the residence pool and verandas. Right now, the plans call for changing the grades up to seaward of those improvements. Obviously, you're not going to allow for grade modifications within bounds of any required buffer, but they have to meet BE standards, so the house will need to be elevated on by. All right, thank you.
If we're gonna go speak, we have to pause the tape, pause the meeting, pause the tape.
No, we can just,
adjourn.
can we just table this?
Yeah.
What's
Do
the?
you want to continue with the agenda? while
Yes.
we're-
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We can do that.
Motion to table
Second.
the present application.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's move on to A 024057, Gregory Robbins and Linda Robbins, application request adjournment to August 13th, 2025. Is there anyone on Zoom that wants to speak on this application?
Motion to adjourn August 13th, 2025.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? The administrative wetland permits for your packets, resolution conditional approval. A 024068, 134 Middle Pond Road LLC. This is postponed until July 9th. Is there a motion?
Motion to postpone to July 9th, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preliminary review secret determination. A 021077, Anthony Rapillo.
The repeal application relates to abutting vacant and residentially developed properties in common ownership. There is a preliminary advisory report on record dated June 12, 2025. The application has been made to gain approval for a carport conversion to attached garage for a second-story addition, for installation of new patio, second floor deck over patio, construction of a partial above-ground swimming pool, new shed, various fences. I have provided a sketch showing an appropriate covenanted wetland preservation area, a naturally vegetated buffer. Portion of that buffer will need to be revegetated. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. But at this point, we're just looking to waive the hearing.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolve that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024061, Andrew Sackett and Deborah Troy Sackett.
This application relates to heavily fire damaged residents in the Hamlet East Quad. The property is bulkheaded. This board had previously issued the original permit allowing for construction of the residence and accessory improvements. That permit was conditioned upon establishment of a covenanted naturally vegetated buffer. The buffer is pretty much intact, but the applicant is looking to fully rebuild the existing residence and the accessory improvements, staying within the same footprints as much as is practicable. As we have sufficient information to make a determination on this application, the public hearing requirement can be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Resolve that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024073, WHB 29, Shore Road LLC.
This application relates to a waterfront residence in West Hampton. There is a preliminary advisory report on record dated June 24, 2025. I had previously issued an administrative wetland permit to allow for the home to be elevated on a FEMA compliant foundation. The home is quite weathered and in need of substantial repair or reconstruction. So the applicant is looking for a permit to demolish the existing home, build a new home on the same FEMA compliant foundation with a small addition and an IAOW-TS. I have provided the applicant with a sketch showing an appropriate covenanted buffer and wetland preservation area. I've also asked that all disturbed ground landward of the wetlands be landscaped with native vegetation. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, the hearing requirement can be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024077, Colin Heffron, and this is postponed till July 9th.
Motion to postpone to July 9th, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025005, Allison M. Generich and Kevin M. Generich.
This application relates to an existing residence in the Shinnecock Shores, Section East Quad. The property has frontage on Bulkhead Canal. The application has been made to gain this board's approval to construct one-story additions, to demolish and replace an existing patio, to relocate a shed. The project plans showing are compliant. Compliant, naturally vegetated buffer, which will be covenanted. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. Accordingly, I'm recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025014, Vincent Montrone.
This application relates to a large wooded track that is also marked by historic barns that date back as far as 1900. The property is located in Eastport. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated June 24, 2025. The applicant had commenced tree cutting and other activity within the wooded valley on the property that contains freshwater wetlands. The applicant has commenced reclamation of the impacted areas of wetlands. At my request, there are additional remedial activities that are needed on the property, which can largely be accomplished without any damage to the existing woodlands. There is a drawing that I forwarded to the applicant showing those portions of the property and valley that need to be covenanted as wetland preservation areas and naturally vegetated buffers. This is an application for which we have sufficient information in order to make a determination. As such, I'm recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution to issue modifications, CB 19042, Bruce Bush.
This application relates to a conservation board permit that was issued for a property on Jag Lane in West Hampton to allow for a second-story addition, a hot tub on an existing deck, and a conversion of a detached garage to a pool house. The original plans called for installation of a bathroom in the pool house, so they were conditioned upon upgrading the sanitary system and installing an IAOW TS. The applicant decided not to go ahead with the inclusion of a bathroom in the converted garage. So Ben has decided not to go forward with the plans for a septic upgrade. There were changes that were needed to existing utilities that are no longer warranted, and the installation of the IA was going to require placement of fill and construction of retaining walls. Now that there is no longer a need for the sanitary upgrade, those plans have been installed as well. And there are 2 above-ground propane tanks that need to be legalized. I did have an opportunity to have a lengthy meeting with the landowner at the property. There is no aspect of the requested modifications that will result in wetland impacts, and the prior permit was conditioned upon establishment of a covenanted wetland preservation area, naturally vegetated buffer, which is intact. As such, I'm recommending that you approve the requested modifications to the permit so the applicant can file for a certificate of wetland compliance and close out the permit.
Motion issue the modification.
Second.
Resolved that a wetland permit modification be issued to Bruce Bushell and Nancy Bushell for the proposed project on the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, time is up. Time is up.
Yeah, it's gonna come in.
He's down the hall on the phone. And the other option, of course, is to adjourn. Give him a little bit of additional time.
Who brought the snacks?
I was waiting for you guys to finish. I don't know if you were.
Oh, yeah.
We're ready.
Marty, can I ask you a couple questions about this as well?
Sure.
Just go up to the mic, okay?
Go up to the mic so that we can pick it up on the recording.
Well, it's part of the record.
I'll call the application again since we
Oh,
tabled it.
yes. Let's see. We're gonna move back to the public hearing A 024056, Crypto Avenue LLC.
Alright, so basically on here, on the proposed to existing, these two side by side. I was just talking to the architect as well, and he made one major concern, which I didn't even really think too much into it, but by moving this whole part, we now go off the whole foundation.
Well,
So we would need another,
the new house has to be built on pilings. You
Right.
can retain the existing foundation, because the existing foundation is not FEMA compliant. So you're
Right, but
gonna
we could
have to
extend.
demolish. No, because you see what of the limit of moderate wave action has to be on pilings. You can't have concrete, you can't have a concrete foundation with hydrostatic flood vents. It has to be elevated on pilings. That's if, that's if you're going with this plan or a significant expansion of the existing home. So you can't retain that foundation.
Young, do you hear that?
Kevin, is Young still on Zoom?
Because here's your limit of moderate wave action. Any,
The existing foundation is on grade, and and that is sitting on timber piles, is what we discovered. And they could build pilings and grade beams into that foundation, and within the LIMWA, all they have to have is breakaway walls on pilings. But they are able to build pilings on that existing foundation.
all right, if you're going to explore that option, we need to adjourn this hearing and you need to come back with a revised plan. Because not, if you're entertaining, retaining the existing home or part of the existing home and heightening existing pilings as part of the new construction, we need to see that on a separate plan. And we're going to have to adjourn the hearing tonight. So it sounds like you're entertaining a significant modification to the plans that we've been considering tonight. The other option is just to adjourn this to give you some additional time to consider the various options. That's actually what I would recommend. It's kind of difficult to just make the decision quickly. You really need to sit down and weigh all your options.
That would
Young,
be
do you have
the-
any more comments?
That would be the sensible thing to do, Marty.
Well, let him call.
And there is time on the July 9th, hearing for like one of the first scenery.
There are two hearings on the agenda, but
Two hearings, one of them has a habit of adjourning.
I think that's one of the ones we sent the warning to anyway.
Yeah, we can't always predict they're gonna adjourn, but
They may show up,
they've been adjourning for a few years.
but they'll show up and say, we're here, but we want to adjourn for
The
another.
other one is a new one, a new hearing.
Yeah, new hearings take a little longer.
Maybe, the Edgar one, do you call that one?
It's going to take.
Okay.
I mean, for the sake of not adjourning this and not dragging this on longer, I mean, would the board be open to us pushing the house back to 75 feet rather than the 85 feet?
No.
It's not the house, it's
The pool, you
I mean the pool. I'm sorry, the pool. The whole project. Pushing the whole project to 75 feet.
85 was pushing it.
Then we can't get a 75-foot buffer.
Yeah. The code says if you can meet the setback, you should meet the setback. So we really need to have a 75-foot buffer, which means 85 feet to the
Are you
project.
saying you don't want to bring it on July 11th?
July 9th.
Well, let him decide what he wants to do.
Yeah, but you're giving him, you're like saying, well, we got to, is he able to bring it on July 11th if he wants
Oh,
or
well,
not?
Yeah, but he has to
Yes, he can
decide,
bring
that's
it on
what he's
July
saying.
Okay.
If he wants, yes.
So based on his question, what was your answer to that?
July 9th does work.
No, I'm saying based on his 75-foot.
Oh, I don't see how that's gonna work, because that means we can only have a 65-foot buffer, and we need a 75-foot buffer.
The minimum is 75 on that buffer?
Yeah, that's the standard for the code, yeah,
And then the other standard is what, 100?
100. I'm going to relax that standard to get the pool out, but to relax the buffer,
Can't relax the
I
buffer
don't-
any more than
I
75.
don't need some substance to justify that, and it hasn't been forthcoming.
Yeah, I just, financially speaking, just looking at it with the pool being removed and the foundation being removed, it's just a major cost to incur. I don't know. I mean, yourself in my shoes, what would you do? Just man to man asking, because I have kids that I want to put into this house and all this money I spent on this, what would you be your take on it as a reasonable?
I would try to modify an existing foundation, and under these circumstances, I would move it to where you need to move it and start fresh.
You got a whole vision what you want to do here. I'm not even beginning to be prepared for that. You know, and I don't know what you're gonna do with the house, and I don't, you know, you gotta pencil things out, and
Should have it.
I mean, I can
I
tell
lost
you're a
it.
guy that likes to get things done.
I hear it.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I can respect that.
Right.
And I can feel you're being pinched.
I just, when we first purchased this property, there was nothing about any knowledge about any of this being brought to us until after we closed on it. So it was all brand new. So the first initial meetings with the town never brought any of this up before closing on the property. The closing attorney never brought any of this up because it wasn't anything recorded. Title search didn't bring anything up. InterScience didn't bring anything up, so it's just a brand new knowledge of all this
If
after
the
closing.
science didn't bring anything up to you?
No.
Whoa. Those wetlands on the property?
They told us there was wetlands on the property, but they didn't tell us that anything had to be revegetated, didn't tell us anything about these major setbacks until after the fact.
This could go on all night. You got to make a decision.
I mean, I would entertain this 85-foot, but the only way I would entertain that is if this is getting something excelled or expedited, because it's just been such a long process.
Getting the covenants drawn up and planting plan stuff is not that we're doing. If you can get the survey done instantaneously and the planting plan instantaneously and the covenants drawn up instantaneously, that's not us. But if you can get it to us, then attorneys can look at it and it can be done as quickly as they can. But
We can go
A lot of this is
as
not
quickly
us.
as we're allowed to go.
yeah,
The problem is that there are a lot of people have interest in this. I mean, I see a lot of people, a lot of things. But the biggest, historically, the biggest delay in, if we're to close this tonight, the biggest delay typically is two things. Getting it surveyed. You got that covered, it sounds like. The second is getting the covenant drawn up, approved, and filed. It doesn't seem like that covenant needs to be very complicated. Do you see anything?
No.
your surveyor and your attorney. Drop the covenant, drop the.
We can approve it on July 9th.
What what I recommend that your surveyor do, Mike, is email me a draft of the survey that I can look at that and let him know whether or not it's good or whether or not it needs to be tweaked before he actually gives you final original prints.
Right. So if we agree to that 85, can we do a straight line across this vegetation area? And then leave the rest as a buffer?
I told you, you're not listening.
What do you,
Adjourn the meeting, let him decide what he wants to do and
Well,
come
I'm
back.
asking you a question. That's why I'm
Yeah,
asking our
let's-
questions.
it's still, if you can ask a question. I don't like that.
The straight line's gonna be for the buffer. You don't have to actively vegetate the buffer at all. Whether you go across or go up with the active planting to restore the wetlands, I would rather follow the line of the wetlands anyway,
Well-
because we can't have you abandon wetlands that are already flagged in lieu of something else, so that'll.
Because I'm just concerned about kids with a pool. I have two little guys trying to put a fence and put something in there without having a
The
fence.
fence can go straight across the line of the buffer. It's probably preferred to do that for your pool fence because you can't put a fence in the buffer anyway. So the fence is gonna go from where, just figure you have a 5-foot maintenance line from the edge of the pool. Put your fence there, that's also the edge of the buffer. So no one's gonna go past the fence, no one's gonna go into the buffer. That whole area from the fence seaward, no one's touching except for whatever path you have to get down. You're gonna have a 4-foot path to meet up with the 4-foot path that's there to get to Phillips Creek.
And then the
You
rest
have
of
just a gate there, but
so
you're gonna
basically it would be a fence here.
straight across with a gate to your 4-foot, 4-foot access path that meets up with that other one, goes down to the creek. And everything else is gonna be, there's gonna be a fence that's gonna stop anybody from going in there. Nobody's gonna be in that buffer doing anything except walking through the path to the creek and back.
Right.
So wherever you vegetate, otherwise, it shouldn't be any big deal. But I would vegetate where the edge of the wetlands already is flagged, because that makes it more sensible to everybody. Try to put wetlands where there weren't, and they might not take, and
And then after that, the rest of this is in agreement.
from the fence, the pool fence, 5 foot away from the pool to the street is yours to do with what you want.
Here up.
But from that point down to the water, all you're having is the path. Everything else is passive or active vegetation, your choice.
Right, but what I'm asking is the rest from here up is all in agreement.
Well, you've pushed it back
Yes, if
26
you push
feet,
it back to
right?
25 feet,
Right, I'm past that. I'm saying beyond.
that's from that point on is yours.
yes, the only
Everything
other,
else that we're proposing on this is an agreeable
Marty had
extent.
suggested something else, and that is the grading around the pool. And I don't have a clear idea of what you want to do for grading. It's not necessary to grade around the pool, because many pools are structurally elevated anyway, and you may want to elevate that up to be even with the house.
So that's what it's being proposed as. This pool is basically level with the back of the house. I think there's one step down, I believe, to the
Yeah,
pool.
it's with the deck, yeah.
But that has to
That's a
be
patio.
achieved structurally rather than by placing fill.
Phil.
And that's not a big deal, I don't think,
What's that?
to elevate the pool structurally.
The pool and the verandas.
Well, I mean, it's gonna be on footings. Right?
Yeah, but as opposed to putting a lot of fill in there, which is what we frown on.
Putting fill underneath the patio, you're saying, or?
You know, around the pool, there may be parts of the pool that are exposed, walls of the pool that are exposed.
Yeah,
But you're
this
not gonna
would
be
have
adding
to
fill to
all be,
grade up to
structurally elevated.
the coping line of the pool.
For purposes of raising the elevation.
Well, we've been
Consider that the first,
Okay,
in the first floor
okay,
elevation.
thank you.
All this has to be structurally elevated.
And with what would you suggest to be structurally elevated with?
Oh, here we go.
I'm saying
That's another question.
all and all of this has to be structurally elevated.
By what, steel beams, you're saying, or?
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of methodologies, but yes.
Take 2 minutes and then I'll come back in and we'll make a decision. Thanks.
Getting that gold time, Stuart.
But just think, the longer we wait here, the colder it gets outside.
Don't start backing up yet.
It's in the 70s, according to my watch.
Already it's high in the 60s.
Sorry, where you are?
Is it 76?
Yeah, well, I'm inland. I'm landward, where you are.
Still 76 out? Okay.
That's like a perfect temperature.
76, perfect temperature for you, maybe.
The problem at my house is as soon as I want to open the windows, the both sides are like, they just a racket. They make such a racket. But I know that's good because it's wetlands. Right.
And in my house, thank God I have air conditioning now.
Yes.
I didn't for 25 years, I didn't have air conditioning.
We just have a couple of window.
Yesterday you
30
came
years in August. So I guess it's been
3 days ago.
just around 25.
I don't like AC. It's
No.
strong. A lot of breezes. It's
Yeah,
just-
oh nice.
So, when it's like this.
Right.
You got a swimming pool.
Anything upstairs, we just can't.
These luxuries.
Fans and open windows.
So the two do.
Yep.
first.
You force everyone to be quiet because the neighbors will hear you. And swimming, you have ocean here, the bay there.
Survival
Now
if it was the good
The
old
rich
days.
people had rooms.
Stagnant.
Yeah, it's very human. It's better. Less human. Anybody timing the 2 minutes? Just gotta turn my timer on.
Really, I put a bunch of stuff in the front. Is that the original plan? No, still moving the plate.
I learned a ton tonight. This is good.
And a state fence, that's coming out.
All right, the architect's gonna make a couple comments and then we're ready to move ahead with something here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're gonna we'll push the house back. Speaking with my client, we're gonna push the house back. We'll meet the 85 foot so that we could get the 75 foot buffer. We'll supply you, Marty. I'll submit all the drawings. I'll get the surveyor to update all the surveys, the proposed surveys, and any of the documents that you need. We'll get that to you by next week so that we could kind of expedite this and move this forward. I know that Mike and his family is desperately wanting this project moving forward, as it's been just kind of sitting for quite some time.
So as he mentioned as well with the 85 foot, we'll accept that part, but I'm just trying to get this thing as quick as we can. So we can try to expedite this and get this done quicker than we can, or sooner than later rather.
Thank you.
So is that something that I could have, as he mentioned, within a week to be submitted to you guys and then something that approval on July 9th?
Yes.
Because I could have I'll call the survey guy, I'll have him there tomorrow.
Yeah, so long as, the modified plans are complete, the survey is complete. That's why the surveyor should email me a draft first.
Can you supply us with every single item you need so there's nothing missing? I just don't want to submit everything and then in a
Well,
week if something's missing.
you don't need to, we can give you the instructions for preparing a covenant, the template and all that, so you can begin to work on that. You need to wait on the approval in order to proceed with the recording of any covenants.
Right, I understand that part. What I'm saying is
We don't need that survey to approve.
Well, we should have, he's indicated he can get that survey to us. And even if you get a survey to me and let's say it needs some minor adjustments and you can't get those minor adjustments done by July 9th, we should be in good enough position to proceed on that.
We can approve, we just can't release it until all the ducks are in a row.
right now. How long
Right.
does it take to record a covenant?
Depends on how fast the county will record it. Usually if you go in person, you can get it done the same day that you go in. You're gonna need a title certification, so I can get your email and give you everything you need right now. So
A
you
title
can get-
certification from previous title, you're saying, or?
From your title company, it's just gonna certify who owns, who is the owner of record. Make sure that you're the owner of record and who has to sign the covenant. And if there's any mortgages, there's no mortgages, then that's better. Are there any mortgages?
No, it's hard money.
Good, that's easier. Then you don't need to consent from your mortgage holder.
So
That's good.
based on title, just to clarify, that's the existing title that I received back in July of last year.
No, it's gonna be a separate, it's just like a 2-page document. It's not gonna be the whole big title
So
search.
it's not like a new title search.
No, you
It's
can
just
go back.
basically certifying that I'm the owner,
Right.
that I can sign off on it.
It's gonna be a lot shorter than the whole like title report that you got when you purchased the property.
Right.
And I can send you a form so you can show your title company exactly what you need.
Right.
You can send me the draft, ahead of time, and then as soon as I get it, I usually look it over within a day or two
Mhm.
at the most, and get back to you with any changes if necessary.
If everybody's in agreement, I'm getting this done quick, then I'll agree to that 85 feet. But I just don't want this to drag more than another month, because another month is $12,400 that I have to pay out. So it's
Our review can be streamlined only to a certain point. Everything else is by others, so the others have to help you get your survey
Right.
and your covenants drawn up and whatnot. Our review, we're agreeing to be as quick with it as we can.
right. My side, I mean, as Young had mentioned, he's obviously the architect. He could draw this within a few days. Survey guy I'll call him and potentially he could be there the next day or so. I mean, saying tomorrow, I mean, it's a little late right now, but I'm sure he could still get there tomorrow, the next day, which is a 2-day lead time. And he turns his stuff around within a day or two. So, that being said, that would be done, and then just basically recording a covenant restriction based on what you guys are requesting. Is that how that goes? Or do you supply us with that covenant restriction and then we record it?
No, you have to draft it.
You
We'll
said
give
you-
you a template.
No, we
that
draft
shows
that.
you-
Mike, I know what to do on the covenant. I know what the surveyor needs to provide. He has to provide the wording, and then we give it to your lawyer. Your lawyer has to record it with the county, which basically adds it to your title deed, whatever, that says, think of it like an easement. It's going to be recorded on your title, so anyone moving forward will know that there's a 75-foot buffer that you can't touch.
That makes sense? Or is that in line?
Makes sense.
So,
All right.
all right.
I'm hungry, so let's,
Me too.
So I guess the board will give us a conditional approval, and then I think that's the agreement, right? We're going to get a conditional approval
On July 9th, yes.
on July 9th. Okay.
You're adjourned to July 9th, as long as you have
Well-
everything ducks in a row by July 9th, we'll have a
We're
conditional
gonna,
approval.
you want to close the hearing tonight, right?
yeah, with you accepting that 85 and then,
Close the hearing.
Yes.
so when you close it tonight, you are agreeing at that 85, that's
No,
what
we're
tonight is
on-
doing?
Yeah. That means this, what we're talking about, that's what we're gonna do. That's the
Right.
plan. We're gonna
The
close it.
condition.
We don't make any changes after that.
Right, so basically, as he's saying, like conditional, more or less?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Conditional approval on July 9th.
So when is the latest that you need all those documents by?
I'm sorry.
The latest you need all those documents by? For the July 9th meeting, I know you guys need a few days prior, right?
We need revised, at the very least, we need the revised survey by July 9th.
And that's basically, obviously, in
And
covenants and all that.
then, we'll have some discussion about how you're gonna address restoration. We'll come to some resolution on that prior to July 9th too, so I can integrate that into the decision.
Any days that you're gonna be off for the next 2 weeks? That I
I
should,
will look for your email.
can you provide me
Yeah.
your email as well?
Sure.
It's gonna be,
I will not be here next Wednesday, and we're closed on July 4th.
Right.
All right.
What's the next step?
If
We'll
it's okay
close-
with you,
close the
we'll
hearing.
close the public hearing.
I'm agreeing on that, so.
We'll close the public hearing, then we'll adjourn.
Is there anyone
Oh, that's right. Is there anyone
live
in
or
the
on
audience
Zoom?
or on Zoom that wants to speak in this application?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Get fed up with it, doesn't it? Boring.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Close.
Microphone.